So what were some of the things we started talking about? What kind of fear that some people have that believers have? We kind of talked about that as we were closing, right, Helen? What were you saying, Helen, when we were leaving? What types of things, what types of fears do believers have?
I know we started off with talking about rejection, just about the fact that, hey, you got this truth and you want to share it with other people. And because of this truth, they might not want to receive it. And then as a side effect, hey, man, if you're trying to live with the truth, they might even back with this truth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, you think about, the 12 disciples, they had fear, that they were probably going to be taken into custody and, arrested and tortured and persecuted and all that type of stuff, so we don't have to worry about on that level. But there's I guess, a form of persecution that we could face, here, with those that don't believe or don't want to be around believers or whatever. So yes, so there's a fear of rejection, fear of being ostracized, fear of being misunderstood, or being retaliated against or whatever, and that is that what keeps you quiet, Melissa? Is that fear? That fear keeps some of you quiet. What other fears may you have? What keeps you silent about your beliefs?
I would definitely say sometimes fear of what the other person might say or what they might think.
Yeah, what other person might say or think.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
how they'll judge you by what you think or what you believe. Wow.
All right. He didn't make it over there with the mic, but he's
Telling someone something wrong.
telling them the wrong thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wish everybody had that fear. Because people tell you stuff. I don't mean just biblical stuff. They tell you any kind of thing that they swear they know about. They don't. They hadn't read anything. They saw it on the internet, and they got some knowledge and wisdom for you. What else? What other kind of fears? What keeps people quiet? What keeps you quiet?
I think judgment is one of them. Because, that person may decide, okay, man, yeah, this person thinks they did this and this. So their reaction to it is, hey, because you claimed this and you said this, I'm gonna watch you for every little thing that you do that's imperfect.
Yeah.
See, yeah, he's supposed to be this right here.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's talking all that stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. That's probably common too. Um, you know, I guess the fear of being judged, fear of being watched, or the fear of maybe making a mistake. And when you make that mistake and people know who you are or who you have claimed to be, now they have a view of Christians and of disciples, a skewed view because of something you did. Does that make sense? Like, well, I don't want people, I go mess up, I don't know. I don't know. I beat my wife beat me, whatever. Now I make Christians look bad, right? So it's like, well, you kind of have that fear to let people know who you are, maybe, so that you don't let them down. Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe people follow you. You ever had a fear that, okay, if you start talking to people, let's say somebody at work and y'all have like a little group and y'all just sit around and talk, you know, and so they kind of follow you and they see you as maybe as a mentor. Do you have a fear that you would do the wrong thing, you know, and let, I guess you call them mentees, let your mentees down? That could be, I don't know, just could be a fear that some people have. But yet, in that same, I guess, in that same um, scenario there, we might not tell them about God, but we'll tell them all about our job. We'll tell them all about oh yeah, that's how you save money. Or we'll tell them all about, well, this is how you supposed to treat your wife, or this, we got all kind of advice for everything. We don't mind being a mentor on everything on religious beliefs, while we have a double standard on that.
And spiritual things. I guess for people, especially people that's not in the body. Um, also, just not for, I guess, not to argue. There's a kind of, I want to say it's a fear. To speak to like my grandma ways in. But I'm not, it's just not to.
Yeah, just not to get into that argument. Don't even bring it up, right? Yeah. I can see that too. That could lead someone to be quiet. Well, I'm not gonna say anything because it's gonna become a big thing if I do. Yeah.
I think the other part of it too is a comfort thing. Like we kind of really have people filled out of what we think we're comfortable talking to them about. So each person, we already got them in a little box, what we think is acceptable to talk to that person about.
Mm.
So then that to bring up what we believe to somebody who hasn't expressly shown us a direct interest in it, it's kind of like you kind of towing outside of the box of what you already got on that person, which not ever really giving them a chance.
hmm Yeah. So we just tend to, I don't know, we kind of come up with reasons not to. We can tell ourselves, it's kind of like cutting my grass. I can come up with plenty of reasons not to cut my. Well, it might rain tomorrow, so let me hold off and not cut it today, or whatever.
I feel with.
Yeah. It's too wet to cut grass today. Or take the trash out or whatever. Well, I might as well just wait and let it fill up all the way. It ain't quite full yet. I can I can push it down some more, stuff a little bit more in there. I need to extra trash bag. Things cost too much, right? You come up with all kind of excuses why we shouldn't. Um, but what has God told us about, when you say you may say the wrong thing, or or that person may not be the person to approach, or whatever, we may think we're approaching them the wrong way. Doesn't God tell us He's going to give us what we need? He's going to give us what we need to say, right? So we've got to put those fears aside, And I know one thing I do. Um, I always tell people you need to read this for yourself now. I said, well, before I even answer this, you need to read for yourself. So don't trust my word. I said, but this is the way I understand it. But you need to read this for yourself and study for yourself. Because I may be understanding it wrong. But we need to put those fears aside in order to go out. All right, let's read. We're still in Matthew 10. Let's read verses 34 through 39, please. Someone.
Do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I came to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be the members of his household. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who has found his life will lose it. He who has lost his life for my sake will find it.
Okay. There's some strong words here. All right, now this is Jesus talking. He's supposed to be a peaceful person, isn't he? But he starts talking about do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that say to you?
says that the truth and the lie is never going to be, in balance with each other. It's always going to be conflict between the two. And he's the truth and the life, then it ain't gonna be no peace between the truth and lie.
Hmm.
And if you are walking in his truth, and guess what? Where you go, there's gonna be conflict when you directly confront what's not the truth.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You know, um, sometimes disrupting things is what's needed. You can't just ease into it sometimes. Sometimes you got to disrupt some things too. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
It made me think about when we just read that. Maybe go back to Genesis. How it said it would be enmity towards, and that Jesus is a sort of this. He's cutting us off from sin. He's our way out of sin.
The sword. Yeah, yeah. Well, partially. Um, who else? Who else? What does it say to anyone else?
It kind of made me think about what Brother Marshall said the other Sunday about people uh, giving instruction and critique. Why is it that when somebody comes and tells us the truth about something that we don't, that bothers us, why is our natural response a lot of times is to go back at the person that told it to? And then what he said was because of the sin nature that was brought into man from Adam.
Mhm.
So when you look at that, that's an obvious conflict right there. That hey, Jesus came in the world to teach the world about the truth. And then you look in I think what part of Matthew goes in. It said that there's gonna be some that's gonna hate the life because they would rather not have their deeds exposed.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, you come in telling somebody, no, that ain't what we should be doing right here. There's gonna be some people that gonna be like, huh, you kinda got a point. But in the same breath, it's gonna be supposed like, you don't tell me what to do. Who is you? You my dad.
How they gonna say?
Yeah, what to do.
True, 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 true. And now that sword, what what do what was swords used for usually? I know they're used to kill people in battle, but what does a sword do basically?
'Cause
Cuts. It cuts. So in this case, what is Jesus saying? I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. Division. Where you get that from?
it's sharper than a double-edged sword.
Very good, very good. And that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. He's saying he's going to separate. That sword, you know, hit you in the right spot, just gonna split you right there. Excuse me. Split you in half or whatever, right? It's cutting away those that believe away from those that don't believe. You know, he's saying it's going to turn man against his father, daughter against her mother, daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. That's probably not too hard, then. Daughter-in-laws and mother-in-laws don't get along, do they? but but yeah, we're gonna separate families, separate people that's been around each other for years and years, grown together, love each other. But the truth has to be told, right? And it says a man's enemies will be the members of his household. Man's enemies will be members of his household. Can you imagine being in a household where you've got different beliefs, two different beliefs? Not very settling, is it? Not very settling, especially during these times with this subject. With this subject. Um, have y'all ever been around, I guess, a person who, well, I guess yourself maybe, to where your beliefs changed and was different than the people that were around you? You know, where I guess you made a decision to do something totally different than what most of the people that were around you were doing. What 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 were the results, I guess? Did it cause some things between you all to change? Did it separate? What happened? If you can give us an example, give us tell us what it was if you can. But if you don't want to tell it, that's fine too. We get it.
That's fine. So, me and my mom, the Baptist, believe, goes to the Baptist church, and I come here. She's come here with me every time. She enjoys coming here. She loves the way Howard teaches. She loves to hear Howard. But that Baptist belief with, in my case, grandmama, them, my mom's mama, that's what she stuck on. You know, all them brothers, sisters, the that. And she don't wanna let go. But now I've talked to her, had several talks. I was talked to her, Jerry's talked to her, Jackie's talked to her. And like I said, she loves coming up here. But it's hard to let go of that from them. But she tells me all the time, I am so glad that I have to correct them. She always say, you go to church, you enjoy it, you want to be there, you know, you know, enjoy being worship, I go to worship. But she said all the time, you know, I'm glad that you made the decision that you did when it comes to the Lord. Right. Yeah.
Okay, but what's so?
It was what I'm saying is that
So
was
the question was, so you changed, you did something different. All right. So what was the results of it? I mean, did it cause anything?
I mean that's what I'm saying.
Is the relationship the same? Did it strain the relationship at
It didn't
all?
it didn't
What?
right. It actually made it better because like I say, she always tells me, you know, I'm proud of you, you know, for the changes that I see in you from me being here at Leesburg. But I mean, it didn't cause a conflict. Now, my mom's brother, my uncle, one of them, you know, we sort of bump head, you know, when it comes to what they believe versus what the Bible said. So a lot of times when I ran into him and we would go to talking, he would talk with me for half a minute. But then when I tried to start showing him some differences in what I've learned versus what they used to try to get me to accept, he'll stop talking to me. I mean, we still have a good relationship, but when it comes to talking about the Lord, he didn't want to have that conversation with me.
Okay.
But I would still try to have the conversation with him as long as he would listen. Don't get me wrong. Now he would listen until it started hitting him on his toes.
Hmm.
And you know,
Gotcha. Something that you used to do or believe in relationships that you had. Example, very good example. Could be anything.
Back when I did used to date and stuff, and
Used to what?
date,
Oh, okay.
uh, friends and stuff were getting all that. I did have a friend that I used to hang out with that technically kind of introduced me to stuff. And after I quit, I just couldn't quite hang out with him really anymore because it's kind of like every time I hang out with you, you on like some type of substance. And the vaping thing, I could kind of like ignore because that's not too big of a deal to me. But I mean, you being high almost every day, I just can't really like hang out with you like that. And it's like it's nothing personal, but it doesn't make sense for you to be around you like that. You're not even sober half the time.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay. So you made the choice not to be around them or him at that point. Okay.
I know some people that still like date, but again, you getting high versus you doing that.
In addition to that, doing all of that. Okay, I got you. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Uh, I got a couple, but the one that kind of hits home, because growing up, I was always close with my uncle, but I was, well, for the most part, Baptist until I got married. And my uncle, so we kind of butt heads, and he don't necessarily believe in God, he believes in a higher power. And that's when me and him kind of disagree. He won't call God God. He thinks that that the white man kind of, we just going with the Bible's made by a white man for us to obey. So we kind of butt heads. So I kind of just started to separate a little bit from him. Still love him. I speak and everything, but when it comes to that topic, I kind of just separate.
I see you nodding over there.
Friend.
Okay.
I know a lot of people like saying that, you know,
Oh,
something like that's what we try. I'm just saying, I do know people who feel like there's no God really, but there's a higher power and they believe in that. And I do separate myself from
yeah. So can you imagine that during these times, there were, Jesus came to fulfill the law, right? But of course, everyone was, taught and had lived, you know, the old law, the Mosaic law, so all the traditions and customs and all the festivals and all the rituals and things of that nature, the sacrificial system and all that was set in place. Now here comes Jesus and he's teaching different, you know, the same but different, right? And so you can imagine being in a family, and usually I'm just, I don't know if it was this way back then, but I'll say it was probably younger people that were more, maybe maybe more accepting, kind of like today. Younger people are more accepting of new things. Older people are like, that crazy mess you doing, all that stuff y'all young folk doing, whatever. You know, I guess kind of similar maybe to James and his uncle, but the younger is more open-minded and more accepting of something that's a little different, and willing to look into it. So I would imagine back in those days it may have been similar. So you may have had like I said, a man and his father, have different views because the younger, that younger generation was, more accepting. Yes, sir. You got the mic.
look at today in today's society. How much different is today's society from then? If you really sit down and look at the whole picture as a whole, it's no different now than it was then. The real difference is time, the era, because you still got the same thing going on right now. You know, because it's gonna be a little touchy.
Uh-oh.
The Baptists still believe the law, still teach and preach the law versus Christ. That's where they like to hang out at. They like to hang out.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament. They still have a gift. They don't want to give up the law. Christ came and told you, I came to do something different than what y'all hate. But you still got that group of people that still wants to hang on to it. So again, today's era is no different than then. Just the time. It's a little different. Still
Yeah.
got things going on.
Yeah. It's still very similar. It's still very similar. Still very similar. I agree. I agree.
Because it typically in the church building, said this way. The younger folk tend to want to make changes, and the older set tend to want to hang on. So, you get that butting of heads, you get that conflict, and typically what's gonna happen then is what you're talking about with that sword. Now you're gonna be that separation is gonna happen. Because the young folks want to do things this way, the older folks still want to hang on to things that way, rather than coming together for the good of, well, y'all set in y'all ways, we'll try to make a way.
Yeah.
And if that you got now, then you got to Jesus.
Yeah. And sometimes, like a younger pastor may see some things differently than the older pastor does, even though they're both Church of Christ. All Church of Christ don't agree on everything. You know, um, um, not that I've been everywhere, but I mean, we're at the lectureship. It's been a year or so ago now. Um, and there was discussions going on, and there were people that were saying this was okay, and there were people like, oh no, it was this big discussion, and some people were like, man, they crazy, what they talking about? And so we say, hey, you know, we got to be careful. We're speaking on something that God never spoke on. So well, he spoke on this, and that means this. So a lot of people had different views on different things. And all these was, scholarly people, with degrees and experience, and church leaders and teachers, and from various congregations and whatnot. But like I said, everybody doesn't agree on everything. Everybody does not agree on everything. And some of it may be tradition, some of it may not be tradition. Um, I remember, we had the old Facebook page. I think it's still out there, but I remember getting this. Probably been 6 months now ago. I remember getting I got like I guess a text through the Facebook page asking about our congregation. Said they had a niece or something that had moved to this area, so they were looking for a Church of Christ for the niece to attend. So she had some questions, and so she was saying do y'all do this? How do y'all do this? How do y'all do this? Things I'm like, yeah. So I'm answering the best I can, and she was asking, do y'all clap? Does everybody sing? That kind of. I guess she was trying to ask, do we have a choir or whatever? I guess what she was trying to ask me, but and she was like, do y'all clap? I said, well, I don't really look around to see if I can catch somebody clapping or not catch somebody clapping. I never really looked around to see, Yeah. I said, but yeah, from time to time, some people may clap, some people may not, that kind of thing, you know. But there's certain probably traditional things that, that Church of Christ, where she grew up or whatever, that these things, she was like, yeah, some other churches of Christ, we don't want them going to that one, so she didn't want her niece to go to one that did certain things. So she was asking questions. And then I I kind of sent it to Howard. He said, he said I'll answer the questions. But but all churches of Christ don't do the same things all the time. You know, even probably within the same area. So um um so there are differences, and like you say, one of the differences is that probably younger versus older, probably. But I don't know. What do y'all think?
I think that once you get past a certain age, I think sometimes it's hard for it to have a younger person come teach you something
Hmm.
because it kind of disrupts that, the thing that we want to be natural. Because the older person is supposed to have all this knowledge and wisdom, and we tend to get into a bad place where we think that they're supposed to have about everything, and there just ain't no way. Because if something ain't been around that long, and you've been around way longer than it has, unless you specifically have something that's making you know about it, then you would.
Yeah, yeah. Experience. You know, there. We used to kind of joke about people on the job. How people say, "Well, yeah, I've been here 15 years. I got 15 years experience." We say, "Do you really have 15 years experience, or do you have about 2 years experience? It took you 15 years to get it." There's a difference.
Yeah.
Somebody can come in 5 years, have more experience than somebody that came in 15 years. You know, just depends on, what they've done and what's happened or whatever, right? That can make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at all that. Not saying the younger people can't teach the older person anything. It's boils down to what they're trying to put in front of the older person because certain things you ain't been on earth long enough to try to teach me or tell me about. If going back to the other part, we go talk about young and old in the church. Because nowadays, the younger people nowadays are more into entertainment. So they think the worship service should be like that. Yeah. Where if you add this or you do this, maybe I'll come. Maybe more people will call you younger people. Then it's not for your benefit. When you don't understand what worship is, that's when all that stuff starts getting
Yeah,
coming into play.
yeah.
Because they don't forget what worship is, why they're there.
But some of that also, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm just guessing because I'm young, so I don't know. But some of that also is, they learn differently. They learn different. The techniques in school now are different. Before, like the way we have this class right here right now, somebody stands up there and kind of lectures you on things. But the kids don't learn like that. The teacher doesn't just stand in front of the school and in front of the class and just tell them stuff. It's more interactive, and they do different things. They do different things to to include them, and it makes them learn. They just learn differently now, and so that could be part of it too. Is that the way they learn? They don't learn as much when they're here because we still teach in that same manner. Could be. I don't know.
But you take the same thing you just said. If they're here and we're teaching and like now, you know, interact, but they'll just stand up there and watch you talk or tell everything and not. So, I get it, but if you want to be different or you want to see something different, then you gotta do just what we're saying. It's a lot of times, you gotta you gotta sort of probe the young folks to do things, or be part of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like you say, in school, they got no problem with it.
But they're being taught. I'm saying the teaching techniques
Yeah.
are different, and so they get them involved because they approach them differently. See, I don't know how to do it because I'm not, I'm not in the school system, but there are probably some teachers, you know, I what okay, you remember when Martin, were you there when Martin led the men's class a couple of months ago? Were you there? All right. All right. What did he do?
He put it on. He put it on the men instead of him.
Kind of
Doing
like an activity.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, me and you was partners, weren't we?
Yeah.
And you had me doing everything. Okay. So
A lot of nothing about it.
I James doing good. He did good. Worked together very well, I think. But anyway, kind of had an activity, right? And that's how they teach in schools more so now, through activity, more so than just lecturing. Okay. So 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 part of it could be that, now I'm not saying they don't want to be entertained, but they're old folks that want to be entertained too. They want to sit back and just and have somebody sing for them. But also, they may not be learning or don't feel as if they're learning because of the way, because of the approach. And that could be part of it too, not just entertainment. Um,
But I mean,
not saying that I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying let's not be so quick to judge them on this one because it could be something else
not really judging
in
you.
addition.
You're
Additional.
saying, but take the same thing you just said with Martin, like you say, Martin is an educator,
Exactly.
so that's natural for him to do it that way.
Yeah.
So, like you say, and we got a few building with a few educators, So if those educators would take the initiative to say, and say, okay, well, I see how they interact with school. So let me go in the classroom and see if we can get some of the same. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
then that'd be another way of, like you say, getting young folks, because now you put them in a situation that they're comfortable with, they're used to,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how it happens in
And they get
school.
more participation and whatnot. Exactly. So yeah. So like I said, that could be part of it. I'm not saying that's all of it. Not saying it's it just could be part of it. But okay, but let's go back to the old versus the young. So the old person don't want to listen to the young person. Don't want the young person to teach anything. A lot of young people don't want the old person trying to tell them anything, right? I know I was young, man. My daddy couldn't tell me nothing. The old man ain't know nothing. He's old.
It makes sense.
Didn't make sense, right?
Yeah. But when you got older,
It started making a little more sense then. Yes, sir.
I was young. I went to Baptist church. Now, I really didn't learn nothing, man, because preacher in the pulpit, whooping and hollering, sweating, but he ain't saying nothing. Today, like Brother Howard teach, and that's far different what he do than what preacher did when I was a kid. And gospel music, if we listen to some of the gospel music, they might be saying the same thing. No, they're not saying the same thing, but they are bringing a message, but it's different. The guitars, the drums, all the instruments, almost like the preacher back in the day, the hooping and hollering. What are you saying?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. All right, let's try to pull this all the way back in. It's way out there. All right. So anyway, we started out talking about
Yeah.
what's that?
Separation.
The what? The sword. The sword. That's right. The sword. So yeah, you doing something different than what others around you, you know, had done or been doing, and you made a decision to change. And how did that affect the relationships? That's where we started, because then we started talking about was James gave an example, and then of course then we started getting into worship itself. All right, but so let's go back. All right, now man against father, daughter against mother, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. The man's enemies would be the members of his household. So can you imagine those conflicts that were there as Jesus and the disciples were preaching and teaching, and it was different than what they had been hearing, what they had been taught, what they had been experiencing, the way they lived their life. Because it was very ritual, right? I mean, there's stuff going on all the time with how they live their lives. Going to the temple, sacrificing things, all of these things. That was their way of life. So you can imagine there was a lot of, you know, within, like I said, within households. If someone goes to hear someone speak, and they're like, yeah, let's follow him. Like I said, because some of them probably weren't saying that. And you can imagine they had preachers and teachers back then too, right? And some of them were preaching and teaching, probably weren't saying much, But then when they heard Jesus speak, I'm sure he sounded a whole lot better. And probably when they started hearing the disciples speak, they probably sounded a whole lot better, made a whole lot more sense. Teaching, they were probably learning more. So now they're following them, and they're going back home with their parents or their siblings, and they're like, "What was it you talking about?" Their friends, whatever, co-workers, whatever whatever it is. Can you imagine the rub, that was taking place amongst, you know, close family, close friends, And so I was just trying to get just think about an example, So basically, they were having to, they were probably being ostracized, even within their own family, arguing all the time, can't sit down to dinner without talking, you know. Then they just don't stop speaking to each other, because they fought all the time when they did speak to each other, because it was an attack on their life, attack on their belief, attack on their faith. When you're different than them, right? So it probably was probably was touchy in more ways than one. So that sword separated. So it wasn't peaceful at all. Jesus didn't come for peace, right? He came to teach them the truth. All right. So then later on it says, he who loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So he's saying that you know this to be the truth, but yet well, to keep peace in your family, you're not going to say anything, or you're just going to stay with them. How many of you have ever done that? Stayed quiet just to keep peace.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bring it up. I'm just,
I like to work my wrong thing.
yeah.
I used to do it. And they'll tell me, I got this one particular program. That was definitely, you think you better than we are. So no, I don't think I'm better than y'all. I'm just different than y'all. You know, I know who God is and how I should conduct myself, and you don't. I don't think I'm better. I just know better. I do better. That's all. But I don't think I'm better than you. But he likes to say that because I am. You don't want to do the things we do. You don't want to participate. I mean, don't I show up? I still come around. But the things that y'all do, I don't want to do them things. It's not because, again, not because I think I'm better, just different. One of the things
Yeah.
you don't want to do what we do.
Right. Right.
No, I don't want to do what y'all do. I learned better. I used to do some things y'all do. But they say when you learn better,
You know better, you do better.
you do better.
All right. All right.
That's the only difference.
So when there's separation like that, and in the examples that you all gave as well, who separates from who? Is it the individual that changed separates from all the other people? Or is that all the other people separate from that person that changed? You think so?
They start distancing themselves from the one that.
So they distance themselves. So they distance themselves from you instead of you distancing yourself from them. But you say you don't want to do what they do. So that's not you distancing yourself.
Because I still attend family functions, family gatherings and whatnot. It's just certain things that they do at this time, I don't.
Okay, so how do they distance themselves from you? Do they still invite you to the family function?
Sometimes.
You go every time. You go every time they invite you. You go.
No.
Okay, see, so you separate. See, so sometimes you go, sometimes you don't go. Sometimes they invite you, sometimes they don't invite you. So who separate from who now?
Now, when they invite me, I'll go. But now they'll do things and not invite me. But I'll still show up, even though they didn't invite me. And then I ask them, well, why y'all didn't invite me? Well, because you think you better than we are. That's the
Yeah.
excuse they're giving me. I said, I keep telling you, I'm not better than y'all, I'm just different.
Yeah.
I'm
It could
still
be.
one of y'all.
It could be this now. Now, I don't know, James. I don't know, but it could be they they may say, well, look, we're gonna be over here doing this kind of stuff, and James ain't gonna be into that. We got more respect for him than to invite him over here because we know what we're gonna be doing. That could be the case. It could be that they respect you to the point that it's like they're not gonna put you in that position to
No,
to have to be around that kind of thing.
one or two of them,
Could be.
I can get that from. But most of them, no.
Most of them no.
They really think.
All right. So the rest of y'all, so who separated? Did you separate from that crowd, or did that crowd separate from you all, or a combination? And was it like, oh no, was it subtle? How was it? Was it an abrupt? Was it like James, like, oh no, we don't want you around here, James? Or was it a kind of kind of a casual thing?
I think a lot of times it's a gradual thing where there ain't no, for most people, it's not an explosive argument or nothing like that. But you just, like you say, you notice over time, they ain't quite as chatty as they used to be. You know, you don't get quite as many invites. So,
Hmm.
and you start wondering, is it because of that? Because, normally what happens to most people is if something good happens to you and you got these people that you really like and you care about, you're going to try to share what good happened to you with them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times their response is to kind of gradually ease away from it because they don't want none of that.
Yeah. And it may not necessarily be, well, I guess the bottom line it is, you know, is your belief and your faith, but like Adrian, who's about to nod off a little bit. He, he's looking down reading. He's looking down reading, y'all. He's looking down reading. All right. Like with him, like he said he didn't want to do that anymore, right? So if they know they're going to be doing that, so they probably want to invite him over to whatever they're celebrating because they're going to be doing that at that celebration. Hmm. To a certain extent. To a certain extent. You know? Excuse me. Mm. but yeah, but there's a separation, there's a transformation that you're going, that you're undergoing. And if they hadn't transformed that way, it's gonna cause a little rub there. And like I said, it may be family members, maybe right there in your household, maybe cousins, maybe your best friends, but you got to make a choice. And like you said, you can't choose your mother and father or your son and daughter over the Lord, right? He who loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. All right. So anyway, we'll stop right there unless y'all want to keep going on this particular topic.
Yeah, Sunday.
We'll pick it up Sunday. No, I will. I will. Well, I think I am. I think I am. We just talked about today. Maybe a little change of plans.
Uh, I ain't going to benefit the Lord.
Huh?
See, I ain't going to benefit the Lord.
But that's why I forgot she had told you that. But
No, you told me that.
oh, I told you. Okay.
You told me that.